My mom is a hardcore mom fan of a major A-list celebrity. She accidentally picked up my phone and used my account to leave a comment for her idol. My baby is so handsome. Mama loves you, she wrote. That night, the hashtag Lucas the Mom Fan went viral on Twitter. The superstar herself replied with a question mark. The entire internet was confused and my jaw hit the floor. I was completely blindsided when my manager called to tell me I was trending. You mean me? I asked in disbelief. Yes, Lucas, you are the talk of the town, he shouted. I opened Twitter with shaking hands to see the hashtags hashtag Lucas the Mom Fan and hashtag Lucas and Olivia everywhere. There were over a dozen trending topics related to me. The situation was actually quite simple. It all started with a single comment under Olivia Sterling's latest post. When I finally saw it, I buried my face in my hands. My verified account had posted, "My baby is so handsome. Mama loves you." I was mortified beyond words. To make matters worse, Olivia had actually replied with a single question mark. To be honest, I wanted to reply with a question mark myself. Looking at the timestamp, I realized exactly what had happened. My mom must have grabbed the wrong phone yesterday and accidentally posted from my account. She is an obsessed mom fan of Olivia Sterling. She spends all day calling Olivia her precious baby. I honestly feel like she cares about that celebrity more than her own son. Brian, I didn't post that. I told my manager. That doesn't matter. What matters is that you're going to be a star, Lucas, he replied, sounding absolutely ecstatic. I felt a bit sick to my stomach. I took one look at the comment section and saw people asking who the hell I was. The fans were already starting to swarm. Some were asking if I was trying to copy Sophia Vance's fan strategy. They told me to stop chasing clout and to stay away from their queen. The insults about being a social climber started rolling in immediately. Are you serious, Brian? I asked. He tried to comfort me by saying that negative attention is still attention. I thought it over and decided that I had to clarify things for the sake of my reputation. I posted a tweet saying, "Sorry everyone, it is actually my mom who is the big fan of Ms. Sterling." Within moments, the replies started flooding in. I felt a sense of relief thinking that people would understand. The comments were brutal, with people asking why I didn't just claim I was hacked. They mocked me and said nobody would believe such a lame excuse. They accused me of using my own mother as a shield to escape the backlash. They kept comparing me to Sophia and calling me a fraud. Aside from a few loyal fans telling me they believed me, the rest was pure skepticism. That was until the superstar herself decided to step in. Olivia Sterling posted a reply saying, "Please tell your mother thank you for the love." Her fans went wild, asking if her account had been hacked. They begged her not to fall for my lies. Some fans warned her not to end up like Ethan Hunt did with his scandal. I was stunned. Did this mean she actually believed me? This whole mix-up actually gained me millions of followers, even if most of them were just there to hate on me. I started getting brand deals and ad offers, which was a total blessing in disguise. A month later, Brian booked me for a reality show called My House Guest. He told me that my mom and I would be guest starring in one episode. I nervously asked whose house we would be visiting. I was terrified it might be a frenemy of mine. Brian told me not to worry and kept the host's identity a secret. He said I would find out once we arrived on set. He promised that this show would make me a household name because his instincts were never wrong. I was about to make a joke when he added that his only mistake was signing me. He told me to go out there and make him proud. I kept my mouth shut and agreed to everything. When the day of filming finally arrived, it all clicked into place. I should have known that the only person who could get my mother to agree to be on camera was her idol. It was Olivia Sterling. The live stream chat exploded when the door opened and Olivia appeared. Then the comments turned on me, asking why I was there. People were furious that I was showing up again. They called me a ghost that wouldn't go away. The haters said I was just chasing clout again, and they couldn't wait to see me fail. However, some people admitted that my face was undeniably attractive. "Hi there. I am Olivia Sterling," she said with a warm smile. My mom's eyes lit up the moment she saw her. Olivia then turned to me and remarked on how handsome I looked. I was still in a daze as we were invited into her Beverly Hills mansion. My mom immediately turned the situation into a private fan signing. She nervously asked Olivia for an autograph addressed to her. Olivia agreed to the request with total grace. I stood there completely speechless. I couldn't believe my mom had actually pulled it off so easily. Suddenly, Olivia's mother, who was standing nearby, looked absolutely shocked. "Sarah Miller?" she gasped. My mom froze and whispered, "Catherine Sterling." They both broke into huge smiles and shared a hug. Olivia and I just stared at each other in total confusion. It turned out our mothers were best friends from college who had lost touch decades ago. After they caught up, Catherine looked at the autograph and asked what was going on. My mom laughed and told her that she was Olivia's biggest fan. She proudly admitted to being one of her mom fans. Catherine gave Olivia a playful nudge and told her she must be special. She said Sarah always had very high standards for the people she admired. Olivia just laughed and looked a bit embarrassed. The Twitter comments were split between people calling me a master manipulator and people being jealous of the autograph. Some viewers were starting to think that I might have actually been telling the truth. A few fans pointed out that my mom's behavior was exactly how real fans act in person. Others were worried about the fact that our mothers were best friends. They sensed that something big was about to happen. Some people noticed that Olivia and I barely spoke to each other during the segment. The haters immediately claimed I was playing hard to catch her attention. Then, out of nowhere, Olivia turned to me with a brilliant smile. "Lucas, it has been a long time," she said softly. My heart nearly stopped right then and there. Alarm bells started ringing in my head as my anxiety spiked. I forced a polite smile and told her it was good to see her again. I tried to keep things professional by calling her Ms. Sterling. The live stream was instantly flooded with question marks. My mom gave me a sharp look of betrayal, but I acted like I didn't notice. I knew I was in trouble for hiding the fact that we knew each other. Whenever she had asked me for Olivia's autograph in the past, I had lied and said I didn't know her. I just wanted to avoid the drama of being associated with a superstar. Now, it looked like my peaceful life was officially over. Olivia said something charming that made my mother laugh like a schoolgirl. Catherine then turned to me and said I shouldn't let Olivia outshine me. She declared that she was officially joining my fan club as my mom fan. The sudden turn of events was so ridiculous that I didn't know whether to laugh or cry. I thanked Catherine for her support. Our mothers were so busy catching up that they completely ignored us. The two of them wandered off to a corner without cameras to talk privately. Olivia apologized to me and said her mother got a bit carried away when she was excited. She seemed genuinely embarrassed by the situation. I told her it was fine because my mom was exactly the same way. A heavy silence settled between us for a moment. I couldn't stop thinking about the viral tweet and how awkward everything had become. I apologized for the trouble my mother's post had caused her recently. Olivia seemed to think of something funny and suddenly let out a soft laugh. She didn't seem angry at all. She admitted that she was caught off guard by the comment, but was glad it was just a misunderstanding. Then she said my name in a way that made my heart race. My anxiety came rushing back instantly. I nervously asked her what was wrong. She looked me straight in the eyes and asked if I was really going to keep being so formal. She reminded me that I used to call her by a much friendlier name back in college. My hand shook so hard I almost dropped my glass of water. I couldn't find the words to respond. The Twitter comments exploded with people realizing that we had gone to the same university. People started doing research and confirmed that we were indeed classmates. They realized I wasn't just some random guy trying to get famous. Some fans even started suggesting that Olivia was the one interested in me. Many of the haters were starting to change their minds about me. Olivia thought for a moment before saying something that shocked everyone. She told me that I could call her whatever I liked. I was completely stunned by her forwardness. The live chat was going absolutely insane at her suggestion. They couldn't believe their eyes because Olivia usually acted so cold and distant in public. Some users joked that Olivia was acting like a peacock, trying to show off for a mate. People were shocked that anyone would dare to say that about her. The atmosphere in the chat was electric. Fans pointed out that Olivia never did reality shows and wondered if she only agreed to this one to see me. She seemed to ignore the cameras entirely. She told me that if her family hadn't moved away when we were kids, we might have been childhood sweethearts. I nodded because I knew she was right about our history. I told her that calling her my upperclassman seemed like the most appropriate choice. She looked a bit disappointed for a second before giving me a resigned smile. The audience was laughing at how I had completely shut down her flirtatious suggestion. They joked about how Olivia was practically begging for a pet name, while I remained strictly professional. It was becoming the highlight of the episode. Everyone was commenting on how weirdly Olivia was acting around me. They started speculating that she had a massive crush on me. They were cheering for her to just tell me how she felt already. Some fans admitted that they would be in love with me too if they were in her shoes. Olivia took charge of making dinner for everyone. She moved around the kitchen with the confidence of a professional chef. I was the complete opposite and could barely even help with the prep work. She asked me what my mom's favorite foods were so she could prepare them. Then she looked at me and asked what I personally liked to eat. I thought I should say something nice to be polite. I told her that I would enjoy anything she made. As soon as the words left my mouth, I realized how flirtatious that sounded and started waving my hands in panic. I quickly clarified that I just meant I wasn't a picky eater and didn't want to be a bother. She kept her head down and didn't look at me. She just whispered that she understood. The fans in the chat were dying to know what I meant by other meanings. They noticed that Olivia's ears had turned bright red. They were convinced that she was completely smitten by my accidental compliment. Some viewers were laughing at how I was accidentally flirting without even realizing it. Others were still skeptical and accused me of being a master of psychological games. They thought my innocent act was all part of a plan. I decided to stay quiet to avoid saying anything else embarrassing. I just focused on helping her in the kitchen whenever I could. The audience loved the dynamic and said we looked like a married couple. People were already imagining our future life together. Of course, the haters were still telling me to stay away from her. 2 hours later, my mom praised Olivia's cooking while making a dig at my lack of skills. My mom wouldn't stop complimenting Olivia for being so talented. I felt a bit annoyed that she had to put me down to do it. I sarcastically told her that nobody could ever compare to her precious idol. My mom gave me another dirty look for my attitude. Luckily, Catherine stepped in and put her arm around my shoulder. She said I was a wonderful boy and that Olivia should be the one taking care of the housework anyway. The two mothers started bickering playfully about which of us was better. Olivia gently interrupted and promised that she would do all the cooking from now on. She told my mom that she was welcome to come over for dinner anytime. My mom was absolutely beaming with joy at the invitation. Then Olivia turned to me and said that I was invited too. I just gave her a polite nod and thanked her. The fans were jokingly begging for an invite to dinner as well. They were touched by how both mothers were looking out for their children in their own ways. It was a very wholesome moment for the show. Everyone was commenting on how sweet the two mothers were. Since they hadn't seen each other in so long, they decided to open some wine. After a few glasses, they were both starting to feel pretty tipsy. Catherine suddenly grabbed my mom's hand and lowered her voice to a whisper. She reminded Sarah that they had made a pact years ago to have her children get married. The cameras caught every word of the shocking revelation. My mom stared blankly for a moment before slowly nodding her head while I sat there in total shock. She admitted that she vaguely remembered making that promise. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Both mothers started looking back and forth between Olivia and me with matching grins. They both agreed that we actually looked perfect together. I was so startled that I dropped my chopsticks on the table. I told my mom to stop joking because Olivia was a massive star and I was just starting out. I insisted that neither of us had any interest in such a ridiculous arrangement. I looked at Olivia for support, hoping she would agree with me. I nudged Olivia's arm, but she remained completely silent. When I turned to look at her, she was staring at me with an incredibly intense expression. She didn't look like she was joking at all. She asked me if fame and status really mattered that much in a relationship. I looked at her with total confusion, but told her that in our industry, it was everything. I was surprised she would even ask such a question. She just nodded slowly and went quiet, lost in her own thoughts. The entire room fell into an awkward silence. Twitter was losing its mind over the news of our secret childhood betrothal. Some haters were glad I recognized that I wasn't on her level. On the other hand, Many fans were convinced that Olivia had actually fallen for me. They were obsessing over her reaction to the marriage talk. A new group of fans started arguing that love was more important than fame. They said we looked so good together that the status difference shouldn't matter. They were already starting to ship us as a couple. By the time Olivia drove us home, my mom had passed out in the back seat from the wine. I was about to thank her and say goodbye when she suddenly spoke up. Her voice was quiet but serious. She asked me what would happen if we were on the same level of fame. She left the question hanging, and my heart started pounding against my ribs. I knew exactly what she was implying. I quickly interrupted her and said that if I reach her level, it would just mean I was a great actor. She looked stunned for a moment before giving me that same resigned smile. She seemed to realize I was intentionally avoiding the real question. She agreed that I was indeed very talented and then drove away. As soon as I walked inside, I saw a dozen missed calls from Brian. He screamed over the phone that I was trending for the third time in a day. I asked him what I'd done wrong this time. Brian sounded like he was about to have a heart attack. He told me he had forgotten to mention that the show was being broadcast live to millions of people. I stood there in complete shock. My body was in the living room, but my soul had basically left the building. I realized every embarrassing thing I said was already all over the internet. I stayed away from the internet for a few hours just to mourn the death of my privacy. However, when I finally checked my phone, the reaction was not what I expected. The tone of the conversation had shifted completely. The top trending hashtags were all about our childhood betrothal and our incredible chemistry. People were obsessed with the fact that we were former classmates. The narrative was changing from clout chasing to a faded romance. Those topics stayed at the top of the charts for the entire weekend. My follower count jumped by several million overnight. I realized that a huge portion of them were people who desperately wanted us to be together. I felt like I was going to faint from the pressure. Olivia was a goddess, and I was just an ordinary guy. I had no idea how I was going to look her in the eye the next time we met. I didn't have to wait long for that opportunity to arrive. Brian seemed to be on a mission to book me for every project that involved Olivia. It was like he was trying to force us together for the publicity. He landed me a cameo role in her upcoming high-budget drama. I spent the entire morning before filming trying to stay out of her way. I was terrified of giving the paparazzi more fuel for their fire. Olivia didn't seem to care about the rumors at all and went out of her way to find me. She cornered me near the trailers and smiled. She said it was good to see me again so soon. I looked down at my hands and nervously agreed that it was a big coincidence. She repeated my words back to me with a hint of amusement. I couldn't bring myself to make eye contact with her. I heard her let out a soft laugh that made my head snap up. I found myself staring directly into her beautiful, smiling eyes. She looked like she was enjoying my awkwardness. I realized she was teasing me, and I felt my face turn bright red. I blurted out her name in a mix of frustration and embarrassment. She just kept smiling at me. She looked surprised for a second that I used her first name without any honorifics. Then she started laughing again and said she actually preferred it when I called her Olivia. It felt like the distance between us was slowly shrinking. My cameo only consisted of 3 scenes, but every single one was alongside her. She was a professional through and through, and her acting was absolutely breathtaking. I found myself getting lost in her performance. Her talent was so contagious that I ended up giving the best performance of my career. The director and crew were all very impressed with our chemistry. Our final scene together was a tragic moment where my character dies in her arms. I lay there on the ground, covered in fake blood, while she held me close. I whispered my final lines, asking her character to live on and see the new world for both of us. It was a very emotional moment for everyone on set. My hand went limp and fell to my side as my character passed away. Olivia held me so tightly that I could feel her entire body shaking with grief. Her performance was so raw and heartbreaking that it felt real. She was sobbing so hard by the end that she couldn't even get her words out. The director finally called cut, and the entire set erupted into applause. It was a powerful end to my short time on the show. The director looked like he had just captured gold on camera. Even after the scene was over, Olivia continued to hold me and didn't move an inch. She seemed to be completely stuck in the emotion of the moment. I softly called out to her to see if she was okay. She looked down at me with so much sadness in her eyes, and her tears were still streaming down her face. It was clear she was having trouble snapping back to reality. She looked at me for a second and then pulled me into an even tighter hug. I realized right then that she had gotten far too deep into the role. I didn't know what to do, so I just let her hold me. I gently patted her back and whispered that I was right here and everything was fine. She looked up at me, her voice completely hoarse from crying. She started to ask me a question, but she couldn't seem to finish it. After my scenes were finished, I went around to say my goodbyes to the crew. On my way out, I accidentally overheard a private conversation between Olivia and the director. I stopped in my tracks to listen. The director told Olivia that her recommendation of me was a brilliant move. I froze when I heard that. I suddenly remembered how surprised I was when I first got the offer for this role. I had asked Brian if they were really offering such a great part to an unknown actor like me. I couldn't believe my luck at the time. Now I knew the real reason behind it. Brian had laughed and told me that I wasn't a nobody anymore. He took all the credit for the deal, boasting about his incredible negotiation skills. I had actually believed him until this moment. I had been so grateful to Brian for getting me the job. It turned out I had been thanking the wrong person the entire time. It was Olivia who had pulled the strings for me. As I stood there in a daze, I heard Olivia tell the director that she had nothing to do with my success. She insisted that I got the role because of my own talent and hard work. She was being incredibly humble about helping me. I felt a strange explosion of warmth in my chest. The director told her that while talent is everywhere, a person who can recognize it is rare. He was clearly crediting her for being my mentor. Olivia brushed off the compliment and said that Director Anderson was the real one who gave me the chance. The director didn't drop the subject and teased her about having feelings for me. I held my breath, waiting for her answer. For some reason, she suddenly looked toward the door where I was standing. I was caught completely off guard as our eyes met. I felt like a kid who had been caught eavesdropping. I jumped back and accidentally kicked the door, making a loud thud. I didn't even wait to hear what she had to say and just ran away as fast as I could. I was so embarrassed I could barely breathe. Olivia came to find me before I left the studio for the day. I felt incredibly awkward after being caught listening to her private conversation. I couldn't even look her in the face. She seemed a little bit tense as well. She started to mention what happened at the door, but I quickly cut her off. I didn't want to talk about it at all. I thanked her for everything and promised to buy her dinner sometime soon. She tried to say something else, but I made an excuse about needing to get home for dinner. I practically bolted toward my car. I fled the scene before she could say anything that might make things even more complicated. When I got home, I rushed toward the kitchen to see what was for dinner. I ended up running right into someone who was walking out. She reached out and caught me to keep me from falling. I immediately recognized her scent and that velvet voice of hers. "What a coincidence," she said with a smirk. I looked up and saw her smiling down at me in my own house. I let out a nervous laugh and agreed that it was quite a surprise. A playful little grin was dancing on her lips. She told me that she had been trying to say that we didn't need to wait for another day to have dinner. I felt a wave of pure embarrassment wash over me as my face turned bright red. I realized she had followed me home or been invited. I just stood there laughing awkwardly, not knowing what to say. Thankfully, she didn't push the subject any further. Before we sat down to eat, I pulled my mom aside to ask what was going on. My mom admitted that she was the one who invited Olivia over. I reminded her that tonight was supposed to be my private celebration for finishing the shoot. I was annoyed that she had invited a superstar without telling me. My mom asked why I was being so stingy about the guest list. She looked very proud of herself and said that Catherine had already agreed that Olivia was basically part of the family now. I was absolutely horrified by what she was saying. My mom just shrugged it off, saying she and Catherine were like sisters and could do whatever they wanted. She informed me that she had already sold me to Catherine, so I had better start calling her mom next time we met. I was completely speechless at the idea of being sold off by my own mother. I tried to argue with her, but she wasn't having any of it. My peaceful family dynamic was officially over. My mom told me I could either eat dinner or starve. I realized I was never going to win an argument with her, so I just gave up. It was supposed to be my party, but I was the one feeling like a stranger. Throughout dinner, my mom and Olivia acted like the perfect mother and daughter pair. I sat there watching the whole display in total disbelief. I couldn't resist making a few sarcastic comments about how sweet they were being. My mom told me to shut up and leave them alone. I noticed Olivia was quietly laughing at my frustration from across the table. I got annoyed and told her she wasn't allowed to laugh at my misery. She looked surprised for a second and then immediately wiped the smile off her face. She promised to be serious and stop teasing me. Once dinner was over, I walked her to her car. I was trying to figure out how to say goodbye when she turned to me with a very serious expression. She suggested that we should start a PR relationship and pretend to be a couple. I was so shocked that I almost tripped over my own feet. A fake relationship? I blurted out in total shock. I couldn't believe what I was hearing from a major superstar like her. She explained that it would be a win-win situation for both of us. I would get the fame I needed, and she could soften her cold public image. I thought about it for a long time and realized she actually had a point. I pointed out that she had a reputation for never engaging in media play or fake dating. Since my mom was her biggest fan, I knew everything about her career history. This was completely out of character for her. She looked a bit surprised that I knew so much about her personal rules. She admitted that she had her reasons in the past, but things were different now. I had no idea what she meant by that. She didn't elaborate, and I was too shy to keep asking her personal questions. I asked her what my role in this fake relationship would be. She reached out and gently ruffled my hair with an incredibly soft expression. She told me to just be myself and promised to handle all the logistics. The next morning, I was jolted awake by another frantic call from Brian. I knew before I even answered that something big had happened. Brian screamed into the phone asking if Olivia and I were officially dating. I nearly fell out of bed and told him that definitely wasn't the case. I was wide awake and terrified of what he was about to say next. He told me we were trending again across all social media platforms. The headlines were screaming about our exposed relationship and the fact that we had already met each other's parents. The photos from the variety show were everywhere. The main story featured a high-quality photo of Olivia gently touching my head outside my house last night. We looked so intimate and happy that it was impossible to deny. I couldn't believe a paparazzi had been there. People were debating whether the news was real or just another rumor. Fans were begging Olivia to issue a denial, fearing that her heart had actually been stolen. The hate comments toward me were starting to ramp up again. A lot of people were pointing out how lovingly Olivia was looking at me in the photo. They were absolutely convinced that our relationship was the real deal. The shippers were already going crazy over how sweet we looked together. I felt like I was going to pass out from the stress of it all. I knew there was no way I could explain this away now. My reputation was officially tied to hers forever. Brian pointed out that Olivia usually denied these kinds of rumors within minutes. He joked that I must have put a spell on her because she was treating me differently than anyone else. I didn't know what to say to that. I told him he was being ridiculous and quickly tried to explain. I confessed that the fake relationship was something Olivia and I had discussed beforehand. I felt a bit guilty for keeping him in the dark. Brian sounded relieved and said that our agency would do everything possible to support the PR stunt. I just mumbled an agreement and hung up as quickly as I could. I felt like a complete fraud. I planned to hide out at home for a while, but my mom was even worse than the internet. She barged into my room and asked if I was finally dating her favorite person. She was practically vibrating with excitement. I told her that it wasn't real and that we were just doing it for publicity. She looked disappointed for a second, but then she got that proud look back on her face. She seemed to think I was just being shy. She told me it was okay because Olivia was so perfect that it was only natural I couldn't actually land her. I nearly choked on my breakfast when I heard that. My own mother was still my biggest hater. I asked her if she even remembered who her real child was. I couldn't help but get a little defensive and asked her why she thought I wasn't good enough for Olivia. It was a matter of pride at this point. She challenged me to actually go out and win her over if I was so confident. I tried to come up with a witty comeback, but I ended up just stuttering like an idiot. I had no defense against her logic. Suddenly, a familiar soft laugh came from my mom's phone. Olivia's voice told my mom to stop teasing me so much. I realized they were on a FaceTime call the entire time. I was completely frozen by the sound of her voice. I couldn't believe how easily she was calling my mother mom already. They seemed to have become best friends overnight. I stormed back to my room and slammed the door. For some reason, I found myself opening up Twitter to look at that photo again. I couldn't stop thinking about that moment. We were standing under a warm street lamp, and our shadows stretched out across the pavement. In the photo, she was looking down at me just as I was looking up at her. The composition of the shot was actually beautiful. I finally noticed that she was looking at me with an expression of pure, unadulterated tenderness. My heart started racing just looking at the image. I wondered if she was just a really good actress or if there was more to it. My phone suddenly started buzzing on the nightstand. I saw Olivia's name flashing on the screen, and I almost dropped the device. My breath hitched as I prepared to answer. She greeted me softly, and I managed a quiet hello. She promised me that she hadn't leaked the photos and told me not to worry about the media frenzy. She seemed concerned about how I was handling the stress. I told her it was fine because she was way too famous to ever need to buy publicity. I nervously brought up what my mom had said on the phone earlier. I was terrified she might have taken it the wrong way. My heart was beating in my throat as I waited for her reaction. She told me not to take my mother's jokes too seriously. I let out a sigh of relief and whispered an okay. She told me to just be myself and promised that she would protect me from any backlash. She then added that we were in this together now, like partners in crime. It felt good to know she had my back. I thanked her for her kindness, and we hung up. For the next few days, I stayed inside while my mom wouldn't stop talking about her. She kept asking me when I was going to see Olivia again. She kept questioning my masculinity and asking if I was man enough to date a girl like that. I finally got so annoyed that I packed my bags and left for my next filming location in Los Angeles. I just needed to get away from her constant teasing. I quickly found out that my new co-stars were just as obsessed with the gossip as my mom was. The leading lady of the project was Isabella Thorne, who was known for being very aloof. However, even she was curious about my love life. After working together for a few weeks, Isabella and I became quite close. One day during a break, she leaned in and asked me if the rumors about me and Olivia were true. She had a mischievous glint in her eye. I stayed quiet because I didn't want to lie, but I couldn't tell the truth either. She took my silence as a confirmation and started squealing with excitement. She seemed thrilled to be in on a celebrity secret. She remarked that Olivia had been looking much happier and more radiant lately. She looked me up and down and joked that she would fall for me too if she had the chance. I felt my face heating up again at the compliment. I was completely flustered by her bluntness, and my face turned beet red. I wondered why everyone called her a cold goddess when she was actually such a gossip. She was nothing like her public persona. I thought about it for a second and decided I could trust her with the truth. I whispered that Olivia and I were just faking it for the media. I didn't want my friend to have the wrong idea. She stared at me in shock for a second before letting out a loud scream that echoed through the set. "A fake relationship?" she yelled. I quickly tried to shush her before everyone heard. I jumped up and covered her mouth with my hand to stop her from shouting. She looked at me with wide, disbelieving eyes as I slowly nodded. I felt like I had just shared a state secret. I thought the news would kill her enthusiasm, but she only got more excited. She told me that Olivia had never agreed to a PR stunt in her entire career. She insisted that if we weren't actually in love, then the entire concept of love was a lie. Suddenly, I noticed a group of crew members gathering near the entrance and whispering. People were saying that Olivia Sterling had just arrived on set. Everyone was speculating about why the biggest star in the world was visiting our small production. Isabella didn't hesitate for a second and practically shoved me toward the entrance. She told me Olivia was definitely there for me and that I had to go greet my girl. She was determined to see her favorite ship become a reality. I bumped right into Olivia in front of everyone and felt like I wanted to disappear. I awkwardly asked her if she was there to visit the set. My voice was shaking and I couldn't look her in the eyes. She just nodded and said she was there to see a friend. I felt a sudden pang of disappointment in my chest when she said that. I realized I had secretly hoped she was there specifically to see me. I just gave her a quiet response and looked down at my hand again. I started fiddling with my fingers as a nervous habit. The silence between us felt incredibly heavy. She stepped closer and told me that she was actually there just for me. She explained that she didn't want to put pressure on me, but she couldn't stand seeing me look so sad. My heart skipped a beat at her confession. My heart was hammering against my chest so hard I thought she could hear it. I tried to act tough and asked her who said I was disappointed. I could feel my face getting hot again. She gave me a look of pure affection and whispered that she was the one who missed me. The moment she said those words, everything else seemed to fade away. All I could hear was the frantic thumping of my own heart. We were scheduled to film a kiss scene that afternoon, but I was so nervous with Olivia watching that I couldn't get it right. The director eventually got frustrated and called for a break. He told me to go clear my head for a few minutes. I went to a quiet corner of the studio to try and pull myself together. Olivia followed me and sat down right next to me on the bench. She softly asked if I wanted to rehearse the scene with her instead. I thought about it for a second and decided that it might actually help. I knew she was a master of her craft and could teach me a lot. I agreed to let her help me with the lines. Within just a few minutes, she had already memorized all of my co-stars' lines perfectly. She started acting out the scene with me, and her performance was so convincing that I started to feel the emotions. I found myself finally slipping into character. As the scene reached its climax, our lips naturally met in a soft kiss. It was just a light touch, but it felt like electricity was running through my body. We both pulled away after just a second. When we finished the rehearsal, my ears were burning and I couldn't even look at her. She told me that I was a very talented actor and that I should trust my instincts. She encouraged me not to overthink things during the actual shoot. As soon as Olivia walked away, Isabella grabbed my arm and pulled me into a corner. She was squealing about how incredibly sweet and romantic the rehearsal looked. She was clearly enjoying the show. I tried to explain that it was just for the role, but she wouldn't let me finish. She told me to stop lying about the fake relationship because the way Olivia looked at me was pure love. She was convinced that Olivia was actually in love with me. I didn't say a word because I knew she was right about Olivia's behavior. I wasn't blind, and I could feel the special connection between us. Then she asked me the one question I had been avoiding, if I actually liked her back. I told her that I honestly didn't know how I felt. Isabella laughed and said that not saying no was the same as saying yes. She told me that she was officially my biggest supporter in this relationship. I tried to argue, but she just kept chanting about how we were the perfect couple. I ended up laughing at her enthusiasm, but I realized I was actually starting to consider a future with Olivia. The idea didn't seem as crazy as it once did. Time flew by, and soon it was Christmas break. Long before the holidays started, our mothers had already arranged for both families to celebrate together in Aspen. I was both nervous and excited to see Olivia again. I greeted Catherine politely when we arrived at the ski resort. She looked annoyed and started complaining to my mom about my formality. She clearly wanted me to be more relaxed around her. She asked my mom if she had forgotten to tell me about our new family dynamic. My mom gave me a sharp look, reminding me of the conversation we had weeks ago. I took a deep breath and tentatively called Catherine Mom. Catherine's face lit up with the biggest smile I had ever seen. She called me her wonderful son and gave me a massive hug. When Olivia finally walked into the room, I felt a wave of pure panic wash over me. I greeted her formally, calling her senior again. She asked me if I had become shy after being away for so long. I denied it immediately, but I couldn't stop my heart from racing at the sight of her. Luckily, she dropped the subject and we all sat down for dinner. I ended up drinking quite a bit of champagne during the celebration. By midnight, the alcohol had gone to my head and I started acting a bit reckless. I looked at her and blurted out a question asking if she actually liked me. Olivia looked me right in the eyes and gave me a sincere nod. She told me that she liked me very much and her voice was full of emotion. Her directness caught me off guard and I didn't know how to react. After a second, I reminded her that our social standings were completely different. I told her that she was a global superstar while I was still struggling to make a name for myself. She reached out and cupped my face in her hands, looking at me with total intensity. She told me that she liked me for the person I was and that fame meant absolutely nothing to her. She was being completely honest with me. She promised to wait for me until I felt comfortable enough to be with her. I asked her what would happen if it took years for me to be ready. She didn't hesitate for a second and told me she would wait forever if that was what it took. I was stunned because I never imagined a girl like her would be so committed to me. I started listing all of my flaws, like the fact that I was a terrible cook. I was desperately trying to give her a reason to change her mind. She cut me off and told me that love doesn't always need a logical reason. She paused for a moment before confessing that she had actually fallen in love with me the very first time we met. I felt like the world had stopped spinning. I was completely speechless at her confession. I vividly remembered our first meeting in that crowded lecture hall back in college. I had been busy talking to a classmate and didn't notice her walking in my direction. We ended up crashing into each other, and my books went flying across the floor. I looked up and realized I had just run into the most famous girl on campus. I nervously stuttered out her name. She asked me if I knew who she was with a curious look. I managed a small smile and told her that everyone in the school knew her name. She was already a star even back then. She gave me a mysterious little smile that I would never forget as long as I lived. She told me that she knew exactly who I was too. I had no idea back then that I had already made an impression on her. I woke up the next morning with a pounding headache from all the champagne. I couldn't remember everything she said after her confession, but the memories I did have made me want to hide under the covers. I was so embarrassed by my drunken behavior. However, things were about to get a lot more complicated. When I checked my Twitter feed, I felt like my world was ending. The hashtag Olivia and Lucas secret marriage was the #1 trending topic in the country. Someone had leaked photos of our families together at the ski resort. Professional internet sleuths had even analyzed a video of me talking to Catherine and proved I called her mom. The evidence was being used to claim we were already married. The rumor spread like wildfire across every gossip site on the internet. Within hours, the entire world was convinced that Olivia and I had tied the knot in secret. I didn't know how we were going to fix this mess. Fans were losing their minds over the possibility of secret wedding. Some people pointed out that Olivia's behavior on the reality show was a clear sign she was pursuing me. They were convinced the marriage was the only logical conclusion. Everyone was talking about the intense look in her eyes whenever she was around me. Our couple name was trending everywhere, and thousands of new fans were joining the ship. I knew we could fake a relationship for PR, but a fake marriage was taking things too far. I immediately posted a denial on Twitter, telling everyone that we weren't married and to stop spreading lies. Olivia retweeted my post a few minutes later with a simple comment saying I was right. Her support only seemed to make people more curious. Fans found our coordinated response to be incredibly romantic for some reason. They were squealing about how we were finishing each other's sentences. They were more convinced than ever that we were a real couple. People started teasing Olivia about whether she had even proposed to me yet. They were joking that she was being too slow and needed to step up her game. I turned off my notifications so I wouldn't have to see any more. I felt my face heating up and decided to put my phone away for the rest of the day. Over the next year, Olivia started sending me huge bouquets of flowers for every single holiday. She was being very public about her affection for me. She always included a card that just said, "Happy Holidays," with a little heart. I knew exactly what she was trying to do, but I was still too scared to give her a real answer. I didn't want to ruin what we had. A year later, the movie we worked on together finally hit theaters. Because our rumored relationship was so popular, the studio invited me to walk the red carpet with her at the premiere. It was my first major Hollywood event. During the event, the host asked us to reenact our emotional death scene for the audience. When her real tears hit my cheek this time, I felt a sharp pang of emotion in my own chest. It felt far more real than it had on set. I was overwhelmed by a feeling I couldn't quite describe. When the scene ended and I opened my eyes, I instinctively reached up and wiped a tear from her cheek. The entire theater went silent. The crowd gasped at the intimate gesture, and I suddenly realized what I had done. Olivia gave me a warm smile and told the audience that I was just a master of improvisation. She handled the situation with her usual grace. I gave her a look of pure gratitude for saving me from more embarrassment. She winked at me, and I felt my anxiety disappear instantly. I felt safe as long as she was by my side. The movie's press tour was a massive success, and my popularity skyrocketed. However, the biggest growth came from the fans who were obsessed with our potential romance. They were analyzing every single interaction we had. I once made a fake account just to see what the shippers were saying on Reddit. They were like detectives breaking down every single second of video we had together. They were looking for any sign that we were actually dating. They found tiny details in my facial expressions that I hadn't even realized I was making. I had to laugh to myself and wonder if I really was that obvious about my feelings. It was becoming harder to hide the truth. The movie became a global blockbuster, and I was suddenly an A-list actor. At the end of the year, Olivia and I were invited to stand together on stage at the Golden Globes. We were the most talked about pair in the room. She gave me a beautiful smile and offered me her arm, which I took without hesitation. The event planners knew exactly what they were doing by seating us at the same table. They wanted to capitalize on the romance rumors that were taking over the world. The awards started, and the first category was Best Supporting Actor. I nearly fell out of my chair when they announced that I was the winner. I couldn't believe I had actually won a major award. I sat there for a second in total shock as the crowd started cheering. Olivia immediately stood up and pulled me into a warm, celebratory hug. She whispered how proud she was in my ear. I could feel her warm breath against my skin as she told me that I truly deserved this moment. Her voice was full of genuine happiness for my success. I felt like I was floating on air as I walked toward the stage. I gave a short, emotional speech and made sure to thank my team and my family. I ended by saying that there was one person who was responsible for everything. I admitted that I wouldn't be on that stage if it wasn't for her guidance. I looked directly at her and thanked her for believing in me when no one else did. The final award of the night was Best Actress, and the tension in the room was palpable. Everyone knew who the favorite was. Olivia was announced as the winner, which was a surprise to absolutely no one. I stood up and gave her the biggest, most heartfelt hug I could manage. I was so incredibly happy to see her hard work being recognized. I whispered my congratulations to her as she walked past me to the stage. Throughout her acceptance speech, the cameras kept cutting back to my face to see my reaction. The media was obsessed with our every move. She stood at the microphone and told the audience that she disagreed with what I had said earlier. She wanted to clarify something about my win. The entire room went quiet as she looked directly at me. She promised that I would have become a star even without her help because my talent was undeniable. She told the entire world that I was a brilliant actor in my own right. I felt a lump form in my throat at her kind words. Another year went by, and it was time for our families to go on our annual winter vacation. This time, we decided to head to a luxury ski resort in Lake Tahoe to enjoy the snow. The atmosphere was much more relaxed than it had been the year before. I was standing out on a balcony, mesmerized by the beautiful white landscape of the mountains. When I turned around, I saw Olivia walking toward me with a massive bouquet of red roses. She looked absolutely stunning against the snowy backdrop. My heart started racing faster with every single step she took in my direction. She stopped just a few inches away from me and looked into my eyes. I could see the nerves hiding behind her confident smile. She asked me if I remember the question I had asked her the previous New Year. I immediately thought back to my drunken rambling and felt a wave of embarrassment. I told her I could never forget that night. She apologized for not being more direct with her feelings back then. I shook my head and told her that I was just as much to blame for being too scared to listen. We were both just trying to protect our hearts. She confessed that she hadn't been able to take her eyes off me since the moment we first met in college. She told me that hearing me call her senior was the moment she knew she was completely in love with me. It was the most romantic thing anyone had ever said to me. She admitted that she had visited my set a few years ago just to see me, but I had hidden in my trailer. She told me she was devastated because she thought I hated her. She had been too afraid to try again until my mom's accidental tweet. She told me that my mother's post had kept her awake for an entire night out of pure confusion. She even called her friend Ethan Hunt for advice on how to handle the situation. I couldn't help but laugh at the thought of her being so worried. She started laughing at the memory of her own panic. She said she was so relieved to find out it was just my mom, as it gave her the perfect excuse to finally talk to me again. She had been planning her move for a long time. She confessed that she had been planning to win me over for years. She promised that if I still wasn't ready to be hers, she would wait as long as it took. She was giving me all the time and space I needed. She told me to chase my dreams and promised that she would always be right there to support me. I felt tears starting to well up in my eyes as she spoke. I had never felt so loved and supported in my entire life. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the old love letter I had written in college. I told her through my tears that I had actually fallen for her the very first time we met as well. I was finally ready to be brave. When she said she knew who I was back in college, it felt more romantic than any movie I had ever seen. I realized that our love story was far better than anything I could have ever scripted. It was a perfect, real-life fairy tale. I realized right then that I had been in love with her for years without even knowing it. Unfortunately, our schedules in college were so busy that we never got the chance to talk again. It felt like the universe was playing a cruel joke on us. I never ran into her on campus again after that first meeting. The next time I saw her was at her graduation ceremony, where she was the guest speaker. She looked like a star even then, and I felt like she was worlds away from me. I had planned to go up and talk to her that day, but I overheard her talking to some friends about her new career. They were asking her how she was liking the industry so far. I stood there hidden around the corner, listening intently. She told them that she loved the thrill of acting and becoming different characters. Her friends teased her and asked if the other actors she worked with were attractive. She gave a simple yes, and my heart sank. I couldn't bear to listen to the rest of the conversation and walked away. I told myself that she was surrounded by the most beautiful people in the world, and I didn't stand a chance. I decided to keep my feelings a secret forever. I tucked the letter away in a drawer and tried to move on with my life. When she showed up to visit my set years later, I panicked and hid in a dressing room until she left. I was so afraid of being rejected by her. I was terrified of what would happen if our eyes met again. Luckily, Olivia didn't seem to take my avoidance personally. She just kept trying to find a way back into my life. My mom's accidental comment was the chaos that finally forced us together. Even after my clarification, the media wouldn't stop linking our names. It was like fate was determined to make us a couple. I tried to be professional and keep my distance because of our public images. However, the moment we met on the reality show, she made it clear to everyone that we had a history. She was done with hiding how she felt. As time went on, I started to notice that she treated me differently than anyone else in the industry. My friends and fans kept telling me she was in love with me, but I refused to believe it. I didn't want to get my hopes up. It wasn't until our New Year's talk in the snow that I finally understood how she felt. From that moment on, she stopped trying to hide her affection for me. She was proud to show the world that she wanted me. My own suppressed feelings finally came to the surface, and I realized I had never stopped loving her. I told her that she was the only person who could make my heart beat like this. I was finally ready to give her my everything. Olivia's eyes filled with tears as she listened to my confession. She took a step forward and pulled me into the tightest hug I had ever experienced. We stood there together in the cold mountain air. She whispered into my neck that she loved me more than anything in the world. I held her close and told her that I loved her just as much. It was the happiest moment of my life. Suddenly, we heard our mothers cheering and clapping from the balcony above us. They were screaming about how happy they were that we were finally together. It was a perfect, loud ending to our quiet life. That very night, Olivia went on Twitter and made our relationship official to the entire world. She posted a photo of us and wrote that I had finally said yes. The internet absolutely exploded with joy. She shared a beautiful photo of me looking out at me. The top comment was from Isabella, who was celebrating the fact that her favorite couple was finally revealed. Everyone was sending us their love and support. Olivia's POV. They say that fate brings you to your soulmate 3 times before you finally fall in love. Looking back at my history with Lucas, I realized that it was always meant to be. I remember every single time we crossed paths before we actually spoke. The first time I saw him was when he was giving a speech at the freshman orientation. so bright and full of life that I couldn't look away. He stood on that stage looking like a ray of sunshine in the middle of the crowd. My roommates were all gossiping about the handsome new guy on campus. I knew right then that he was someone special. When I finally saw a close-up photo of him, I realized he was even more handsome. I found myself following his career from distance. He was the most beautiful person I had ever seen. Our second meeting was in the university lecture hall. I actually ran into him on purpose just to get his attention, but I accidentally hit him way too hard. I felt terrible as I watched his books scatter across the floor. He looked at me with so much shock and confusion in his eyes. He recognized me immediately and called me senior. I was so nervous that I could barely speak. I asked him if he knew who I was, and he gave me the most charming smile I had ever seen. He told me that everyone in the school knew. My only thought in that moment was how much I loved his smile. Our third meeting was on a movie set a few years later. I made up an excuse to visit a friend, but the truth was that I just wanted to see him again. I had been thinking about him for years. I found out later that he had been hiding in his dressing room the entire time I was there. His friend tried to get him to come out and get an autograph, but he said he was too shy to talk to me. I was heartbroken because I thought he didn't want to see me. I assumed he was trying to avoid me because he wasn't interested, so I stopped trying to contact him. Then that mom fan tweet appeared and it completely changed my life. I spent days trying to figure out what it meant. I wasn't even mad about the comments. I just wanted to know if it was really funny. I called Ethan Hunt in the middle of the night to ask him for dating advice. He laughed at me for being so obsessed with the random social media posts. Ethan gave me all the advice he could, only for us to find out it was all a big misunderstanding. He made me pay for a dozen expensive dinners as a penalty for wasting his time. It was worth every penny. I didn't care about the rumors or the embarrassment. I was just happy that fate had given us another chance to be together. This time, I promise I am never letting it go. This story is not about viral tweets or celebrity gossip. It is about two people who were drawn to each other from the first moment they met, but spent years too afraid to admit it. Lucas thought Olivia was out of his league. Olivia thought he was just being polite. They circled each other through college, careers, and awkward dinners, always missing the signal because they were too busy doubting each other. The lesson is simple: love whispers. It hides in a mother's accidental tweet and in the way someone looks at you when they think you're not. The bravest thing you can do is look at the person you love and say, I am scared, but I am choosing you anyway. Timing is never perfect, and you will never feel completely ready. If you wait for the perfect moment, you'll be waiting forever. The best love stories are not the ones without obstacles. They're the ones where two people keep finding their way back to each other. And when they finally stop running, they realize they have been home all along.